Welcome to Mission Majjhima, Ajahn. So Ajahn, tell us about Majjhima Nikaya 81, the Ghatikara Sutta.
So this is the first of what's called the Rajavagga, or the chapter of 10 discourses on kings that have to do with kings. And here we start off with a story from the past, a Jataka, where the Buddha is walking. He and Ananda leave the side of the road, and the Buddha smiles. And Ananda says, Tathagatas, Buddhas do not smile without a reason, so why are you smiling? And the Buddha says, actually, just right in this exact spot, in a previous age, there was the Buddha Kassapa. The Buddha Kassapa gave his teaching, and then Ananda puts out his sitting cloth for the Buddha to sit on and says, it would be amazing, good that you would give a teaching at the same spot where Kassapa Buddha gave his teachings. So the Buddha relates this story at the time of Kassapa Buddha, a Buddha before him. And at that time, Kassapa Buddha's main supporter was named Ghatikara, who is this really cool character who is basically the pinnacle of right livelihood. And Ghatikara is a potter and has a friend named Jodhipala, who is a Brahmin, so priestly class. And Ghatikara is a disciple of Kassapa and very inspired by him, and keeps trying to get his friend Jodhipala to go and hear a teaching from the Buddha Kassapa. And Jodhipala just keeps saying, no, these menials, these shaven-headed ascetics, they're fake ascetics, fake monks. And Ghatikara tries 3 times to try to get Jodhipala to go, and Jodhipala keeps refusing, and he says, okay, Ghatikara, okay, let's go down to the bathing place. And then they go down there, and then Ghatikara tries again 3 times. Let's go hear the Buddha Kassapa give a teaching. And 3 times again, Jodhipala keeps pushing. No, the menial, shaven-headed, fake monk down there. And so Ghatikara then takes Jodhipala by the kind of hem of his skirt. And basically, Sujato speculates that actually pulls off his Jodhipala's lower robe, so Jodhipala is there naked. Jodhipala is still refusing, even after he has had his skirt pulled off. And then Ghatikara takes Jodhipala by the hair, and this is a very faux pas thing to do, and says, we're going to go see the Buddha, okay? And Jodhipala is just totally flabbergasted by this. This is to have someone in a lower class, like a potter, take a Brahmin by the hair. So he agrees, okay, we'll go see the Buddha Kassapa. And they go, and the Buddha Kassapa gives a teaching, and they're both very inspired. Jodhipala actually wants to go forth, asks for the going forth. Buddha Kassapa gives it to him, and it turns out that Ghatikara can't go forth because he has to look after his blind parents. So at that time, there's a king named Kiki who goes to see the Buddha and asks, do you have a better disciple than me? And the Buddha Kassapa says, yes, I do. It's this Ghatikara, the potter. And Kiki is now flabbergasted. How can this potter, this lower class guy, be equal to me? I'm coming and giving all this great food and all these great requisites. You should come and spend the Vasa, the rains retreat, with me. But Buddha Kassapa refuses because he has Ghatikara as his disciple. And why is Ghatikara the foremost disciple? It's because he's just a paragon of filial piety. He looks after his parents, of right livelihood. He actually doesn't even use money. He doesn't eat afternoon. He makes pots and then will put them out, just put them by the road, and anybody who wants to can leave some kind of food or some kind of offering in exchange. So barter economy versus a capitalistic money-based economy is what Ghatikara is working from. He also keeps precepts, and he's a non-returner. So to show Buddha Kassapa's trust in Ghatikara, Buddha Kassapa actually goes to Ghatikara's house and successively takes food while Ghatikara isn't there. And Ghatikara finds out about this later and is just elated, just knowing that the Buddha would trust him that much. And then the Buddha comes or his disciples come and take grass root from Ghatikara's own house, takes the grass roofing from that. And Ghatikara himself is not disappointed that the Buddha would do that, but is elated. And that's the story, basically. And King Kiki is inspired by this, by Ghatikara, and then offers to sponsor Ghatikara. But Ghatikara says, actually, I've got enough stuff right now. You keep whatever you want to offer for you. And then the Buddha in our present age comes back and says that he, the Buddha, was Jyotipala in this past lifetime. So a really cool story of a fascinating disciple who's practicing right livelihood to a nth degree. And Ajahn, what would you like to draw out of this sutta?
So that was a great summary of a fascinating sutta, which I think could raise many questions for people. It involves huge scopes of time and just a really interesting story. To work backwards, actually. First, when the Buddha visits Ghatikara's home and takes food and the thatch from his workshop, he asks permission with basically the parents. But it is still a measure of trust that just delights Ghatikara. And very interesting to see that Ghatikara's elation lasts a whole month and the parents last 2 weeks. But just to know your ability to resonate from a good act, like a tuning fork struck, I think that can have to do with the depth of purity of the chitta, of the heart. And Ghatikara's got a very pure heart. He's a non-returner, as you mentioned. And the other thing to mention is when King Kiki asks, do you have a better supporter than me? The Buddha actually answers, in Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation, it does say, he says, yes, I do. But in the Pali and Bhante Sujata's translation, he kind of sidesteps a little bit, quite skillfully. Instead of saying, yes, I have a better supporter than you, he says, actually, there is in Savatthi a potter. So he almost just begins describing Ghatikara without saying, he's, better than you, king. And yet, there is this implication of I value virtue above just wealth, no matter how wonderful Kiki's gift was. And Ghatikara's situation is, he's a really important figure in the discourses, and I think that's why many have heard of him. First, he kind of sets the basis for a radical Buddhist economy where he doesn't, use exchange of goods by a capitalist metric. He gives his services, his pots, he puts it out there, and on faith, he trusts that people will give food and for him and his blind parents. And we know practitioners who have tried this and really tried to live in this way out of generosity. And it's beautiful. And then also to know that, even if there are conditions that mean ordination is not correct in that moment for one, either one has duties, parents, children, a job, or maybe not just a job, but things that hold one back from full ordination for many in this life. And just to see one can still practice beautifully with that karma, like Ghatikara, where, and I think his model is kind of a beautiful thing to, not everyone's going to be able to embody this exact practice, but it's beautiful to have as a vision in the suttas shining for us of someone holding these 5 precepts with the third is celibacy, keeping all these beautiful ways of living with faith and purity. The other thing maybe worth mentioning is looking at how King Kiki gives. He's very beautiful. He invites the Buddha for a meal. He picks out the black grains from the rice. He gives with his own hand. And in one sutta, the Buddha says, one who gives, a true person gives carefully with their own hand, showing respect, what is valuable, with a view something will give of it, or come of it. So King Kiki actually is a very beautiful role model in and of himself. And finally, or almost finally, just Ghatikara trying to get Jyotipala, as you noticed, with pulling him by his hair. And we might not recommend that with everyone, but there are times, we're so delicate sometimes with pushing people, and there's definitely room for not proselytizing. And there's times where someone actually would really resonate from actually going to a Dharma talk or reading a book. And there may be times to sort of encourage a bit more. And finally, the scope of cosmology indicated here. This is one of the canonical bases of the Jataka literature, much of which is commentarial that came after the Buddha. But these stories are in the suttas. And actually, there's parallels. There's another sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya where Ghatikara comes to the Buddha as a god, a non-returner, and actually they have a conversation about their past life together. So there's a really good chance this seems like an authentic discourse, and these kind of amazing things happened in the suttas. And who knows exactly, if that place the Buddha sat was in middle, in India at the time. I think it was, but I think there needs to be room for a spaciousness of mind and heart around the landscape of the suttas that bleeds into the mythological, but also I think the Buddha would say is quite literal in many senses as well. So fascinating discourse. So Ajahn, what is the word of the week?
The word of the week is anagarika. Anagarika. This means literally one who is homeless. It's what in certain monasteries is the initial phase of training. When one wears white before taking on novice or samanera ordination, one has formally given up the life of one who is agara with a household, one who owns a home, and has become anagarika, one without a home.
Become very careful with staining things when you wear white. We've been through this.
It's true.